Thank you. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending Friday afternoonish, or depending where you are, earlier on Friday with us with the NIST Falcon Friday sessions, where we get to learn and exchange ideas with fantastic educators and creators. And today we have an awesome trio of fantastic researchers and humans that I love from the Allen Institute. If you haven't checked out some of the resources available from the Allen Institute, I hope that after the first 5 minutes of this session, you are convinced to go visit the website. I know I am already on it on the screen for some primary lit and immunology resources. And today we have three wonderful guests from the Allen Institute: Rachel Penton, Maddie Mueller, and Caitlin Casimo. Did I do that correctly, Caitlin, after many years? And they have a lot of really cool educational resources and open data sets with a fantastic institute that's devoted to creating knowledge and sharing it. And this team that is here with us today has really made it possible to connect those resources, those educational resources that they've created with the data sets that their scientists are generating and make them accessible to the broader public and students. And today, we get to learn from the team, from communities of practice to collaborations with scientists, how you can use some of these resources and maybe contribute to educational research. So thank you, Rachel, Maddie, and Caitlin, for taking time this afternoon to talk to us.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank y'all for having us. I'm really excited that we're getting to share in the NIST Falcon series. I actually started attending these in 2020 when they started. And then it turns out that everybody wants to have their faculty learning communities and series of talks at the exact same time on Fridays. And so I've had much spottier attendance in more recent years, but I really love this series and so happy to be here. So I wanted us to talk a bit about what we're doing in the space of educational development to help support faculty to work with our resources, but also talk about educational and faculty development a little more broadly, because while not all of y'all have maybe integrated open science into your courses, I'm sure you've had the experience of integrating other sorts of course designs, high impact practices that are a high lift and have experience with what educational development can do to help you do that, and also have ideas that you may want to discuss or share about how educational developers can help you do those things. So that is the purpose here. So the Allen Institute, right, is a nonprofit scientific research institution located in Seattle, Washington. Our core principles are big science, is the first one, and we do these big moonshot basic science projects. For instance, we have our big Allen Brain Atlas, right? So we have a mouse brain atlas that has the uh, transcription data for like every brain region across the atlas. And it's really wonderful resource. You know, our cell science division has been doing looking at how do cells work, and then how do they work under different conditions? How do they, you know, form organs over time under different conditions? Our Immunology Institute has our the Human Immune System Explorer and has a Healthy Human Immune System Atlas that anyone can go in and look at what a healthy immune system looks like using multi-omic data. So we do really big science. We also do team science. So our scientists work on teams to solve these big problems, to answer these big questions in a model that doesn't quite look like academia, right? And then we practice open science. So all of our data, all of our tools, anything we had to do to get at that data, we then make publicly available for anybody to use. And all of these together allow us to have a big impact. Um, this is a timeline of the Allen Institute for the past 20 years, although we've had a couple more years beyond this, and how this has kind of rolled out. It originally started in 2003 with the Allen Institute for Brain Science. Incidentally, that's when I started grad school, and they started their first big project, and they actually completed it before I finished grad school, and it was so cool to see that come to fruition. Over time, they've also launched the Allen Institute for Cell Science, the Allen Institute for Immunology, Allen Institute for Neurodynamics. So we actually have a broad, kind of a broad spectrum of a lot of data across multiple biomedical um, uh, foci. So yeah, so we have actually just a ton of data, which is great because I don't know, I've been teaching students how to do research for quite a while, and it's really wonderful to be able to use these open data sources when I can find them, right? Especially when you want to teach students about the complexity of authentic data. Also, really big data has some more complexity to it than smaller data sets that you can capture in the classroom, but maybe you can't. It's unlikely that people are doing transcriptomics in the classroom, in a classroom lab. So it's really nice to be able to access these open data sets. Um, so Right. Open science and right, integrating open data into the classroom can help us address a lot of these common things that we're trying to have our students learn, right? We have a number of standards across our fields, right? Really, vision and change feels like it kicked it off for biology. And then there's been more and more standards released for these different fields through neuroscience and cell biology and immunology and open science, and having access to that raw data can help our students learn quantitative reasoning. It can help students learn about experimental design. It can help them run their own experiments. It can help them evaluate like complex data. Um, and importantly, this can increase the inclusion in scientific research, which is not always accessible for everybody across all institutions. So having these very large open data sets available makes it easier for people to get in there and do some research. So I actually started teaching with Allen Institute's open data, I think in 2021. So I used to be faculty at UNC Chapel Hill, and I've developed multiple cures, so course-based undergrad research experiences using the open data from the Institute, as well as multiple case studies with my colleagues at UNC Chapel Hill, some of that within Carlos's HITS RCN, which is how I came to start doing this. Um, and something that like I really learned while doing this is that, integrating open science into the classroom takes quite a bit of work and skill, right? And there needs to be support for folks who want to do this so that they can learn how to do this, right? And if you've ever designed high impact courses, and many, many people have at this point because AAC&U released what high impact practices are for undergrad ed back in 2008, you're familiar with what happens when you are designing these courses that have a high impact on your students, that have all of this like integrative type of assignments and practices so that students really like their lives get changed by these sorts of courses. But they're also a very heavy lift for faculty to teach, right? Um, the pedagogical principles that underlie these high impact practices, which really to me look like examples of courses that I've actually taught all of those types of courses before, except for internships, are things that you can really put into any class. The real world application I find very nicely marries with working with open data. But kind of the point for me to like center this in high impact practices is that the type of lift it sometimes takes to get open data to work in a classroom looks very similar to the lift it is to work with high impact practices in the classroom, right? To do that sort of design. And there's the two main, like, kind of overarching challenges for that. And one of those is acquisition of pedagogical content knowledge and technological knowledge, right? So, like pedagogical content knowledge is this idea that when we're teaching, we both need to know our pedagogy and our content, and there's an intersection of those. It's not just about knowing your science if you're teaching scientific disciplines, but also knowing how to teach the science. And then when you start bringing in technology, which is often the case when you're working with very large open data sets and you need to start coding, you also have technological knowledge that's getting in there. And the acquisition of that knowledge and those skills does require training, right? Right, reading the literature, attending workshops, etc. And so there is a challenge of like getting skilled up to do these things. And then on the other side of that, there's also the design and the implementation. So design in and of itself, right? We have a number of really great types of course design. We use backwards design for our courses, but there's also, you know, kind of pre-existing things like cures, etc. Even if there's a pre-existing structure, course design is a heavy lift, right? When you're designing a new course, you have to, you know, develop your syllabus, develop everything you're going to do on every day, develop everything the students are going to have to do every day, all of the materials, etc. And so that's actually quite a high barrier. And then implementing it, these courses are more difficult to implement than simply standing there and talking to students. They just are. And so, like oftentimes we actually want support around that, not just from our universities, but from other faculty that are going through the same things, right? And so when we've been looking at how do we support our faculty who want to integrate our open data and open scientific tools into their courses, how can we address these challenges, right? How can we address how people need to acquire pedagogical content and technological knowledge? And how can we address the challenges in designing these and implementing them? And so we've actually put together a whole suite of workshops and resources that we've made available. We're currently working with a model of 3 different types of educator workshops. One is what we're going to call data science skills. When you're working with open, big data, you actually do need to learn data science skills so you can teach your students the data science skills that they need to work with the data. And so, for example, this summer, we're offering our first coding workshop for neuroscience educators. And so this means that the educators that take that coding workshop are going to learn not only how to code, also how to teach coding, and it's specifically designed to work with our data and not necessarily just like the basics of coding, but it's the basics of coding to integrate our data into classrooms, right? Another model that we have is something that I'm calling our developing teaching tools model. This is a high structure pedagogy and collaborative course design type of workshop with a community of practice. And so this is usually when we're working with some older, more familiar data sets that have been around for a while, often with earlier career educators, but not always. I know for my cohort this summer, I have quite a few people that have been doing this for a while. I'm hoping they'll be taking on a bit of a mentorship role with the other attendees who may be earlier in their careers. But this is about marrying really good pedagogy and course design with integrating our open data, right? We'll have sessions where they're learning how to use the data sets with a scientist. We'll also be using a structured backwards design process to help them actually structure their courses or activities that they design. And then our third type of workshop that we offer is what we call our Teach Stravaganza, right? Which is a lower structure collaborative course design workshop that's really geared towards those who have been designing courses for a really long time and they're experts at curricular design, and we're bringing them in and they really get to partner with our scientists. It's a two-way collaboration where the scientists are learning from those educators what our engineers and our scientists need to do to make our data more accessible to educators, while the educators learn about our data and tools at a much deeper level so that they can then work towards integrating them into their courses. And that also comes with a year-long community of practice. So having these three different tracks, we're hoping are going to support, right, both the acquisition of pedagogical content and technological knowledge, as well as course design, and then having that support of year-long communities of practice that go along with them. So, so I'm really excited that we're rolling Teach Extravaganza has been piloted before, but we're rolling the other two types out this upcoming summer. So along with this, we also have resources. So, which I think Carlos had dropped the resources in the chat, like the link to the resources in the chat. We do offer some single lesson plans and full modules for people to, take, drop into their class, hack apart for bits if you want to like change up what we've done and make it more tailored for what you teach. Also as examples for ways that our data can be incorporated. We also, right, we have these partnerships with educators and where they are designing with our data, and then we put what they've designed on our website, right? There have been publications where people have done course designs with their data, and those papers now live on our website so people can go and see the paper and see what other people have done. And something that we're leaning far more into now is creating these resources to support educators in their own course and activity design that we are designing, in part to support our workshop participants, but also making them publicly available for anybody, even if they're not able to make it to a workshop, to help support integration. One of these is a database table that we're working on that has a full list of all of our data sets and tools with the major learning objectives for vision and change and those other standards I had listed on the other slide mapped onto each of our data sets. This was really important to me when I came to the Institute because I love to do backwards design. I like to start from those bigger, broader learning objectives. And I was like, well, which data set do I use if I want to teach this? And which data set do I want to use if I need to teach that? And so creating a table for that for educators to have is really wonderful. And we've got through our neuro data sets. We're starting to work on our cell and our immunology as well. The other thing we're creating, which is actually inspired a bit by something that I had a graduate research student create for me when I was teaching a cure using our data, is a data set guide or multiple data set guides for each of our data sets. So geared towards undergraduate level, that you could actually hand over the guide to an undergraduate if you're teaching a cure, and they can use it kind of as a reference manual for what is the background for that data set, what techniques were used, how do you actually work in the data set, how do you navigate the graphical user interface, and with examples of what experiments might look like. Our latest one that we have out is for our ABC Atlas or Allen Brain Cell Atlas. And there's a really cool like flow chart of if you're interested in, you know, working with uh, working with spatial data, then you need to go to this data set. If you want to look at this sort of data, you need to go over to this data set. And you could basically like figure out what you're trying to experiment, and the flowchart will get you to where you need to get to, along with some guides on how to develop a research question, which is always a challenge for students. And then finally, we also have explainers. These are short, high-level overview articles that are a primer. These I really love. They're the things I would assign before class. Like, what's a UMAP is really one of our most popular ones, right? That's a uniform manifold approximation projection, which is basically how you take multi-dimensional data and collapse it so you can look at it. And that's a really popular one. But we also have other ones. We have one that's like what is omics, to give students an overview of omics before they start diving into multi-omic data or even just a single omic, right? So we're trying to create these to have more resources just available for people to use when they're teaching. So yeah. Yeah, what is a UMAP, Carlos? Yeah. Um, so that's a summary of what we've been creating and the ways in which we're trying to support our educators so that they can use our data, integrate it into their classes, right? I do have discussion questions for us to kind of go through to think about educational development more broadly, but also I'd like to pause and see if anyone has any questions about any of the things I just mentioned, because it was a lot. Any any questions? No? Cool. Okay. Um, so at this point, I'd like us to roll on into our discussion part of the session. I do want us to be thinking about educational development more broadly, because like it's really important for me, for us to, integrate open science in the classroom, but also it's important to be able to be supported in whatever you're doing within your classes. So I guess what I'm wondering is how can educational development help you with the challenges that you face when you're integrating high impact practices, which may or may not include integrating open data and tools into your classes? We have a collaborative Google Doc with different tabs. I love that tab feature now, for 3 different breakout room discussions. The first discussion is, what are the biggest challenges you face when integrating new educational practices? And I think, Carlos, you were going to help out with breakout rooms. Yeah. And so if we want to give people like 5 minutes, 7 minutes to have a discussion, drop notes on that document, right? And then we'll come back, kind of look through them, and then get into the other ones.
Are we doing 4 breakout rooms
Do you want to do 4 breakout rooms?
or 3?
Let's do 3.
Okay,
Yeah,
here goes.
thank
And
you.
we'll do 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, let's do 5 minutes. That way we can take longer on the later one.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, that way groups have 4, 3, 4-ish. And I see people on the document, and I can float around and go into rooms. And I did not put us in rooms. Did I?
Okay.
No.
I'm
Okay.
okay with that.
I can go bother room 2 if that's okay with you all.
Mhm.
Okay.
Rachel, I think the Google Doc was a great idea. I see a lot of people on here.
That's that's why I like these. I don't
Yep.
know if we're still recording.
Oh,
Yes.
Probably. Hi, all. Welcome back. I was able to watch the Google Doc while y'all were recording what you were discussing, which is really wonderful. Um, not surprised to see that time is the thing that comes up the most. It's also been my personal experience, right? Um, and also not just like the time it takes to course design, but the time it takes in your classroom to do these types of activities. Does anyone want to share a little bit more about like how that came up in y'all's discussion, or what were the specifics about that?
I am collaborating with some folks to write a case study, and I tried a couple of the slides as to, hey, how does this work? And so I still felt like I had to do all my other slides as well. So working in the new thing, it didn't quite fit. It felt really jammed, and so I would have to rethink now and totally make it new. So
Yeah. Yeah. If you're putting something else in, you have to take something out.
yeah, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I see in the chat, helpful if new activities, if someone already knows how long it's going to take. Yeah. Yeah. So time, also another theme that came up is like pushback, both from students, maybe not wanting to try something new, but also potentially from colleagues about like not having support from colleagues and I don't know if someone wants to elaborate on that. I've also like I've seen it. Yeah, but if someone wants to elaborate.
So I'll say we talked about the challenge for students when they're presented with a new method of teaching and learning that they may not have experience with. And sometimes that's not well practiced at the beginning for both the instructor and for the students. And there are some, emotional reactions to that, where students are, a little caught off guard or not sure if if their regular skills and approach is going to work in that new environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially right when it's brand new and they haven't seen it in a previous class and they haven't ever tried it before, especially if it's new and then also difficult. Right? Those are the ones where there's a lot of pushback. Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh, I love this from the chat, right? It's good to have a buddy colleague who's also trying it out with you, right? Um, yeah, like somebody else at your institution, other faculty there, or I think even sometimes, right, like these sorts of faculty learning communities where we're separated by distance, but like meet regularly and can talk about it, right? Like, how is this going in my class? I tried it out. What does it look like in yours? Yeah. So yeah, trying to think if there were other themes. Um, I did see money, right? Anytime I think about like putting in new stuff in classes, the things that pop up are time and money, right? So not surprised to see money also pop up, right? For types of resources. Somebody said, right, Symbio costs some money. And so not having funding. I know, right, when I was teaching faculty at an R1, we think of R1s as being very heavily resourced, but the teaching faculty aren't. And so it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to do all of these things, and there's not funding for any of them. Yeah. Um, yeah, I can see, Kate, you added in the chat, right? These faculty learning communities where you're doing a specific type, right? So everyone together is doing a cure. Yeah, I was lucky to have that when I was at UNC as well, as I was in a cure one. So everyone's kind of designing it together, and then everyone goes and watches each other's class, and it's really helpful. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, thank y'all for engaging with that discussion question. We have another one, which is our second one that we're going to go and talk about is what elements in your courses would you change if you had unlimited resources? What would you do? Unlimited time, unlimited money. What would you do with your courses? What's the dream? Right? Um, so yeah. And Carlos has put the second tab Google Doc link in, and we'll go back into breakout rooms. Thank you. All the robots. Yeah, one of our pipetting robots. Hmm. Hi, all. Welcome back. It's so much fun to see the wish lists. Hopefully you looked at the other group's wish list as well in the Google Doc. We're able to see, right? It's very obvious that if there was unlimited resources, we'd actually do all the things that we're constantly told are the best practices for our students, right? Um, which then gets frustrating when we don't have unlimited resources. Um, does someone want to tell me, I guess, how did the discussion go when you're coming up with this wish list? Was it all hopeful? Was there a little bit of frustration as you're writing about these? I guess I'm just curious what that process was like, thinking about all these things you could do, right?
Our group talked about how lab courses are the first to be cut now
Mm. Oh,
because of budgets mainly, and because they require a lot of resources, um, which just seems very backward for STEM.
yeah, yeah. That sounds really frustrating. I was unaware that they were starting to cut them. Like, yeah. Yeah. I am curious. I saw there was something about the like in a few groups, right? The need for more TAs, more graders, right? There was some stuff around assessment, right? That we would assess our students differently. Yeah. Does anyone want to speak to that in more detail a bit?
I just feel like we had a speaker in our group before where they looked at students thinking about DNA and the structure of DNA and how, in how many different ways students have things wrong. And it wouldn't come out if you asked them a multiple choice question. And it may partially come out if you ask them to write about it, but we hardly ever ask students to draw these elaborate things. And I had a draw question in my recent exam, and I giggled a lot because the things that students don't think about as they fill in my diagram is really funny, but so insightful. It just takes me forever to grade. And that's why I said I would need more people to be able to look at this together.
Yeah. I'll share, when I was at UNC, I've actually taught a lot of courses that integrated the CREATE method, which is a way of analyzing scientific papers very deeply. And the cartooning of the methods is my favorite part. Oh my God, yes, some of it's really, really funny, but it's so clear when they understand it and when they don't. Right. And it's so wonderful, especially as a formative assessment tool where you can see very quickly and then get that fixed. If they were to write me a summary, that you at this they can just throw the methods in Chat GPT and give me a summary and I would never, right? But if they're drawing, that's very difficult to do. So yeah. I like the question in the chat, which is something that was popping up in my mind as y'all were writing about making class sizes smaller. Right. Yeah. Love a concept map. Yeah. But making class sizes smaller, right? Which is right. You need more TAs and support, or you need those class sizes to be smaller, right? Like it's all that same problem. Yeah. Yeah. Um, also really noticed, right, a lot of experiential learning. I got very excited about a potential Yellowstone field trip reading these. Right? That looks fantastic. Whoever suggests that, what would you have them do during the field trip?
That was my suggestion. Like it's kind of a joke, but we'll watch a movie or something together. I'll be like, "Oh, field trip!" We're all going. But to make that a reality, that would be really cool. So I have no idea. I'd probably do some micro stuff and get Carlos involved. Yeah, I think it's so important to just get outside of the classroom, get outside of the four walls, and do something different. And I think there would be so much more learning taking place if it were more experiential.
Yeah. Some universities under their study abroad courses, they actually do within the US, right? If you're at a US institution, they'll do a within the US summer program as well. So potentially like the study abroad, but Yellowstone. Yeah. But yeah, great. And then we have a third discussion question that is basically if you had to imagine your ideal like faculty development, educational development, workshop, programming, whatever, like what do you want your CTL to offer, right? Your Center for Teaching and Learning to offer. What does that look like to support you? And obviously they can't just give you more TAs or smaller classes, but what are the things that you would like to see? Right? So yeah. And then when you come up with them, I'm going to tell you to go ask for them from your CTL because they really want to help you. Carlos, are you setting that up? Cool. Again, it was so great to see what y'all were saying on your documents, right? Or on the Google Doc while you were, talking about this. Yeah, the first thing that popped up was the developing a sense of community and also, oh no, scheduling at the same time. And there's nothing realer than that, right? But yeah, also, that there's, people want to actually be able to implement things from a workshop, not just hear about it, that there's something that you can actually use immediately. There was something about certification, and I was wondering, like, what the discussion is around certification, what that's looking like for folks. Not sure. Well, from group
That
2.
was, yeah, that was Ponjug's
Okay.
comment, so maybe he can elaborate.
Yeah.
But I think his sound was breaking up during our
Okay.
conversation, so
Yeah.
it'd be hard.
Yeah, I was just wondering what type of certifications, right? That sort of thing. Yeah. What else? So great. This is really helpful to see as well. I'm going to say your CTLs will do these things for you. If you were unaware, if they aren't already, you literally just email them and say, these are the things we'd really like, and they will organize them for you. But yeah, this was really wonderful to be able to chat with y'all today and to learn more about like the struggles that you have with implementing these sorts of things, what your kind of idealized classes would be like if you had unlimited resources, what you would want faculty workshops and programming to look like to actually support you in these things. So I really appreciate y'all's engagement and time. Thank you for being with us. So yeah. And happy to take any questions. I know we're at / overtime. So yeah.
Thank you for joining and sharing and making us think about spending money and doing neat things. What questions do people have, and how can we learn more about what you are up to and get